People are not objects on an assembly line. That's a ridiculous notion. But you got to have that fundamental transport element. Otherwise, it's really tricky. University education is often unnecessary. I think that's how it should be. And it shouldn't be that you've got like these grades where people move in lockstep. This factory here can serve as an inspiration to people in Germany and throughout Europe for excitement about the future. I mean, we've got to be excited about the future. We've got to do things that make us want to live. You know, it cannot always be about problems every day. I mean, do you want to wake up every morning and everything's just a problem? Well, what inspires you and what makes you excited about the future? There's got to be some things like that. Generally, you want education to be like as close to a video game as possible, like a good video game. Like, you do not need to tell your kid to play video games. They will play video games on autopilot all day. So if you can make it interactive and engaging, then you can make education far more compelling and far easier to do. So you really want to disconnect the whole grade level thing from the subjects. Allow people to progress at the fastest pace that they can or are interested in each subject. It seems like a really obvious thing. I mean, I think like most teaching today is a lot like vaudeville, where and as a result, just not that compelling. It's like somebody standing up there and lecturing to you, and they've done the same lecture several years in a row. They're not necessarily all that engaged or in doing it. Education is often unnecessary. That's not to say it's unnecessary for all people, but I think you probably learn about as much, or the vast majority of what you're going to learn there in the first 2 years, and most of it is from your classmates. Now for a lot of companies, they do want to see the completion of the degree, because they're looking for someone who's going to persevere and see it through to the end, and that's actually what's important to them. So it really depends on what somebody's goal is. If the goal is to start a company, I would say no point in finishing college. So I think that's how it should be, and it shouldn't be that you've got like these grades where people move in lockstep, and so everyone goes through, goes like normally, we'll go through English, math, science, and so forth from like 5th grade to 6th grade to 7th grade, like it's an assembly line. But people are not objects on an assembly line. That's a ridiculous notion. Trying to build a company and have it succeed is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. I mean, what tends to happen is it's sort of quite exciting for the first several months of starting a company, and then reality sets in. Things don't go as well as planned. Customers aren't signing up. The technology or the product isn't working as well as you thought. And then that can sometimes be compounded by a recession, and it can be very, very painful for several years. It is definitely true that, I mean, maybe there are occasionally companies that get created where there's not an extended period of extreme pain, but I'm not aware of very many of such instances. New great entrepreneurs are born every day, and we'll continue to see amazing companies get built. I would definitely advise people who are starting a company to expect a long period of quite high difficulty. But I mean, as long as people stay super focused on creating an absolute best product or service that really delights their end customer, if they stay focused on that, then if you get it such that your customers want you to succeed, then you probably will. Make sure if your customers love you, your odds of success are dramatically higher. To starting a space business, it's definitely not the easiest environment to start a business. I think if most people were to rank order what's the highest return on investment, I mean, space would not be very good. When starting SpaceX, the joke, I heard the joke, this joke so often, it was ridiculous. The joke was, how do you make a small fortune in the space industry? And the punchline, of course, being start with a large one. It's tough going. I think if SpaceX and other companies can lower the cost of transport to orbit and perhaps beyond, then there's a lot of potential for entrepreneurship at the destination. I mean, you can think of it like the Union Pacific Railway. Before there was the Union Pacific Railway, it was real hard to have commerce between the West Coast and the East Coast. It would go by wagon or a really long sailing journey. But once there was the transport, then there were huge opportunities. And now look at sort of, the California and Washington State and all the industries that have been created in Silicon Valley and Hollywood. But you got to have that fundamental transport element. Otherwise, it's really tricky. So we're trying to establish that transport element, make it easier to get to low Earth orbit, and hopefully in the future make it easier to get to the moon or Mars. And I do have sort of this long-term vision of like, if there was affordable transport to a place like Mars, I think the entrepreneurial opportunities would be phenomenal, because there'd be people that would want to create everything from the first pizza joint to the first iron ore factory to be like just an enormous amount of opportunity for people to create things on Mars, and then it'd be different things on Mars. Some of the things on Mars would be different that we don't even imagine on Earth. It'd be very exciting. So I think that's really key to making things happen in space. Is you've got to have some place to go and some way to get there.